So we're ready to begin. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. A special, very huge thanks to Professor Dr. Georges Kachaamy for agreeing to help us and run a very cool, very interesting webinar. We already have a lot of people who signed in to today's session, so I think he's very popular. And also the topic is about meditation in times of uncertainties. Without further ado, I would like to now introduce you all to Dr. Georges Kachaamy. Some of you are already familiar with him. He has a very strong social media presence. But for those who don't know, Dr. Georges Kachaamy is an architect, an artist, a scholar, as well as a philosopher. He is the director of the Center for Research, Innovation, and Design, which we call CRID here at AUD. And he's also the associate professor of architecture at American University in Dubai. Some of you might not know this, but he interestingly has a PhD in architecture from University of Tokyo in Japan. So now go ahead and give the microphone and the camera to Dr. Georges.
Okay, so hello everyone. First, thank you Maraike and Junaid for providing this platform and for the opportunity to transmit some of what I learned about meditation, and hopefully I will manage to interest the audience today and intrigue their curiosity about the topic. Meditation has been such a significant part of my life. It has transformed me and still is on many, many levels. I wanted to start with this image not because of COVID-19, but I feel it reflects an interesting state of mind. In his anthropological perspective on the Japanese tea room, Herbert Plucho said that freedom through restriction is one of the meditation principles applied to both the tea room and training. Freedom is sought not in large space or in unrestricted behavior, but on the contrary, by accepting and overcoming restrictions. There is a freedom through meditation and other forms of self-discipline. Before we move ahead with the main body of the web-based seminar, it is important to highlight that some of the materials that I used here falls under a fair use of others' work for educational purposes, and you can see a full citation of borrowed material at the end of this presentation. I will be covering the following topics, starting with a brief background and a general introduction with regards to my connection and training in meditation. Then I will provide some understanding about the topic and selected types of meditation. After that, I will introduce some meditation practices and techniques. And finally, of course, as Junaid said, we'll answer some of your questions. My journey with meditation started at a very early stage in my life. I still recall my first experience when I lied down and start counting my breath and calm my mind. I was introduced to a specific way in relaxation, and because it helped me, since then I was intrigued about Eastern philosophies in specific. Of course, in the past 30 years, I did not focus on one practice or one technique, but I was moving and experimenting with different ones. I looked at the scientific, the religious, and even the one that are considered a little bit esoteric and pseudoscience. This has also influenced my studies, and both my DES, Diplôme d'études supérieures, and the doctorate rotated around that topic. As Junaid said, also my doctorate has that topic, and as you can see in the slide, related to the monk space of meditation. I believe I was quite fortunate to get the adequate support from everyone around me, and without that support, I could not have been able, to be where I am today. Robert Sharf once wrote, "Emptiness that can be deemed empty is not true emptiness. Form that can be deemed form is not true form. True form is without shape. True emptiness has no name. That which has no name is the father of all names, and that which has no form, the mother of all forms." In my doctoral dissertation, my focus was mainly on the term emptiness, or what is known in Sanskrit term by shunyata. which is quite misunderstood because its translation has a negative connotation, especially in the Western versus Eastern point of view. Now, the Chinese ideogram that you see here can be translated as no, the word no, and was a way used to actually not allow the mind to stop or linger on one term, one label, or one definition. Nagarjuna, who is quoted here, has used this method to refute all idioms, all explanation. He was one of the Eastern philosophers that has influenced Mahayana Buddhism, and by that rejected the intellect as a way to comprehend that notion. I'm mentioning this because the act of practicing meditation is in the early texts contained a number of statements associating it with emptiness and suggested the act of going to an empty place. There was always a relation among the three keywords: emptiness, meditation, and empty space. With all the training and practices that I passed through, one of the highlights was in Japan, where I managed to experience more the collective kind of meditation. I will elaborate later on these different types. Eheji, that can be translated to the Temple of Eternal Peace, is a Soto sect of Zen Buddhism located east of Fukui with beautiful, beautiful scenery and surroundings. Here you can see how humidity increases the green mosses, and this place was one of the most beautiful combination of humidity, mist, and greenery, as you see in the picture. Most of the temples, anyway, that I visited while doing my research were quite open, hospitable, and kind enough to allow me the access to spaces that usually were not open to the public. This is me on the left, learning from one of the priests and taking picture of spaces. The picture on the right shows the Sodo, which is a priest hall where each trainee has one platform called Tan, was almost the size of 1 by 2 meters. You see, this is a restriction that I'm talking about. On this platform, each individual meditates, eats, and sleeps there. Here is another temple in Tokyo called Chokokuji, where I managed to visit and practice meditation on almost weekly basis. In this hall, like the one in Eheji, silence is respected and meals were mostly always vegetarian. Prior to talking about meditation, I would like to share with you a simple observation that will help, at least intellectually, with the understanding of one of the main aspects that meditation allows you to experience. It is important to know that this is as limited as our verbal and visual communication is. And like many things in life, only experience can make you feel fully grasp what anything is truly about. So these are 4 images of the same location. It is taken at the famous Shibuya crossing. If anyone visits Tokyo, this is like very famous place. Also, I think it has been featured in many movies, where you can see a lot of people moving from one side to another in both directions. The top left photo is produced by a fixed camera and an instant opening of the shutter. Now, the top right image is also of the same spot. However, the shutter was left open for a while. The one at the bottom left, the camera was vibrating with an open shutter, and the fourth one also with an open shutter, but it was moving very fast. Now, which of these photos represent reality? Of course, our usual daily experience is reflected in the first photo, that is the top left one. Other photos might appear like a trance state or a state of hallucination. However, if we think about it, all of these photos are reality. It is just a version of the reality that is appearing as such under different circumstances. Please remember this slide, because at one point I will refer back to it so that you can do the association. Anil Fass, the editor-chief of Neuroscience of Consciousness, whose focus is on biological basis of conscious experience, he said in his TED Talk, I believe it was in 2017, that if hallucination is a kind of uncontrolled perception, then perception is a kind of a controlled hallucination. It is just that when we agree about that, our hallucinations, we call that reality. He continued by saying that human consciousness is a tiny region in a vast space of possible consciousness. So, what is it all about? Before categorizing or defining meditation, it is significant and fundamental to understand that, like many things in this world, meditation is foremost a human experience. I cannot emphasize more on that. It is a human experience. This human aspect of it is what makes it universal. Of course, with time and like many other practices, in order to become more structured and organized, like our societies and cultures, it became part of specific disciplines and then institutionalized on the spectrum where on one side is conservative, religious and strict, on the other side is more liberal, secular and flexible. Now, I'm going to use many of crossing axes as a way to visualize and explain some of the aspects about meditation. Now, each axis represents a continuum of possibilities ranging between 2 points. For example, in this situation, the 2 points are religious, secular, and the other 2 are Western, Eastern. Once crossed, the axes create a grid of 4 quadrants or a matrix of different outcomes. So meditation as we know it today has evolved immensely and was subject to different contexts and cultures. It was influenced by many social, geographic, and sometimes even political environments. Its journey went from east to west and from religious to secular. From records that we currently have, we can state confidently that it was employed since ancient times in various forms by many religions. It started specifically in the Indian subcontinent and was associated mainly with Eastern philosophies and religions. When moved towards the Western part of the world, it influenced and was influenced by diverse and eclectic complex systems, including but not limited to Western esotericism. The practice gained greater notice in the post-war United States and specifically in the 1960s and 70s. Now, to be more technical and Eastern-centric, the word meditation refers to the Sanskrit term dhyana, translated to Chinese as Chan and Japanese as Zen. Many sources refer to the practice of meditation in a different manner, but we can clearly find repetition of certain terms, ideas such as mental training, concentration, self-awareness, and so forth. If we exclude the religious and spiritual aspect of it, we can summarize it to be a training of the mind through concentration to achieve awareness, mental and physical well-being. Meditation is now used by many non-religious supporters as a method of stress reduction and relaxation. And you can find so many even scientific papers about it. Now, undoubtedly, all these definitions are valid and reflect aspects of meditation because they belong to the main levels of experiences that is common to most of us. The further one investigates, practices, and experiments, the more their understanding is expanded along with knowledge, wisdom, and by that, better decision-making, of course. To put it in simple terms, when one calms the mind, when one calms the body, the mind will have to follow. And when both are tamed while staying awake and attentive, then one becomes more aware of one's individual consciousness, especially when other levels of experiences are revealed to it. This links back to the 4 images that was shared earlier, that I told you to remember, and showcase that with different tools of perception arise different appearance of reality. So all of the things that are associated to meditation, I mean, you can say, peacefulness, relaxation, happiness, calmness, well-being, you can see them here everywhere. They are important, but they are byproducts that arise by practicing meditation and not the main purpose of meditation. Allow me to elaborate using frequencies as an analogy. Imagine we have certain number of frequencies. Here, I'm going to draw your attention to 5 layers. Okay, so now it is important to state that there is no hierarchy in them, even though they are stacked vertically. Do not consider it as such. Think of these frequencies as a different level that the individual consciousness can experience depending on the tools at hand. The physical experience, the mental experience, the spiritual experience, the egocentric experience, and the oneness experience. Now, of course, most people can easily identify with the first 2 layers, which are, the experience of the mental and the physical. The other 3 are the less experienced ones and can be more difficult to communicate to others. Just a second. So the physical part relates to the human senses and interaction on the physical level. That is your survival needs and wants. Anything that we can touch, the apogee of materialism, this is where mostly the realm of science is. The mental part relates to the human mind that includes the rational thinking, the intellect, feelings, emotions, technically anything that happens in the mind, including but not limited to memory, dreams, and aspiration. What happens there is less accepted, of course, and more debatable among the scientific community. Now, the spiritual part relates to human gnosis and all the mysticism and esotericism that come with it, including the metaphysical, parapsychology, pseudoscience, and so forth. It is a subtler existence with higher frequencies at play. Examples are like out-of-body experiences, near-death experiences. This is like mostly refuted by science, and a lot of debates and uncertainties are there. The egocentric part that deals with the human self, the ego, the big I, me, this is the me that remains when everything else fades. This is actually what is the individual consciousness. And the oneness part relates to the level where the self is dissolved into the all, the everything. This stage is the one that many of the yogis, gurus, Buddhas, or who are called enlightened ones usually talks about when they meditate and reach a higher sense or level of vibrancy. This is the experience when the one self is united with the oneness of everything. This is technically the collective consciousness. So why I'm telling you all about that. Here what I believe is a purpose of meditation, the main purpose of meditation. Meditation is the vehicle that through practice allows the individual consciousness to experience all these different levels, including itself. And then I'm not saying they are only these levels, I'm just giving an example. And by that, creates a buffer zone where individual consciousness can observe and engage in all these layers, until that same individual consciousness experiences the fading of itself and the union with the collective that is everything. So on the grid between awake and unawake, aware and unaware, meditation will diagonally take you or take our individual consciousness from an unawake and unaware state and more into a much aware and much awake state. So, which type of meditation is the right type for us? Well, I have to say it's not a competition. There are different types of meditation and each one has its own ways, benefits, and techniques. It is truly case-by-case situation and it is as diverse as humanity is. So every individual, if interested, must try to see which one fits better for them. To simplify this, I categorized the different types by using the grid again: stillness, mobile, silent, and audible. In this way, we can mainly find 4 quadrants. The stillness silent quadrant can happen by standing, sitting, or lying. The stillness audible quadrant that can include inner or outer sounds. The mobile silent quadrant that can happen by walking at a certain pace. And the mobile audible quadrant, it is done by body gestures and movements, including external or internal sounds. In addition, meditation can be done individually or collectively, guided or unguided. Remember when I said like when I was in Japan, I actually did the collective one. So here is like the type of the collectively. So regardless of the way, there are always observation, concentration, and awareness involved. Nowadays, there are many types of meditation. I would invite you to look at different ones and see how there are and which one can work best for you. You have the tantric, the mindfulness, the Zen, the yoga, the Tummo, the metta, transcendental, and so forth. Do not be discouraged with so variety, with that much of variety there. Start with any and try to build up on it, or just move to another one if you felt uncomfortable. I mean, I had experiences where I had to move from one to another because I didn't feel that it was something for me. Now, obviously, I cannot cover them all, but I will share with you selected meditation practices that you can start with, or you can try yourself. I chose 2 related to Eastern philosophies and 2 that are more secular. You can check the links of their videos at the end of this presentation. I have it at the end, or just reach out to me. I can just easily send you the link so that you can look at them. This one is called Zazen. I started doing it while mainly I was in Japan. It is a seated meditation type in a specific posture, of course, with a spine that must always be straight. In the video that I have here, I can show you later, probably at the end of the presentation if you want. You can see, for example, how to practice it step by step. For this one, you will need comfortable clothes and what is known by the zafu, which is technically it's a cushion. Also, you can use a chair instead if you have knee problems or you felt pain, while seated on the ground. I mean, many people don't feel comfortable at one point and then they start having pain. When you start having pain, means that, okay, this is not for you, just either change position or change that type of meditation. This one is called the Ishakriya, is a type of guided meditation. It is quite simple and less formal than Zazen. The guided means that you follow actually someone who is guiding you how to do it. It relates to breathing and observation of the breath. I would recommend those who are interested in this topic to check out their website. I also have the link, or even look at the book called Mystic's Musings. I really recommend that. It is a 500+ pages book. I mean, if you're interested and have the time to do that. This one relates more to mindfulness meditation, and it exists under the New York Times website, where you can find a comprehensive way on how to do that type of meditation and many information about meditation in general. This one is based on Tummo meditation, and it is actually centered on breathing as well. I mean, this guy Wim Hof has he's like a very famous online. Has guided videos that you can actually follow and train your breathing accordingly. Many people experience instant benefit from this one, but of course, like all practices, some people take more time to get result, and some reach faster than others. Here finally, I'm going to share with you relaxation tips with what I call the rule of 7. Now, the one on the left can be done at any time in the day if you are anxious at one point or stressed out. Also, it works very well if you are having difficulty in sleeping or have insomnia. It works very well with me, of course, sometimes when I have insomnia. It is actually quite simple. You need to breathe in, counting to 7, hold it in, counting to 7, breathe out, counting to 7, and hold it out, counting to 7. This is, as you can see, that's the square breathing concept of it. Repeat it 7 times and you will feel the difference, or if you're not being able to sleep, you will be able to sleep better. The one on the right is best done when you are lying down, eyes closed. It is a countdown from 7 until 0, where you associate one body part with a number to total 7. So for example, right leg, left leg, right arm, left arm, the abdomen and the chest, and at the end, of course, the head. Each time you breathe in and out, you focus on one body part and relax it until you reach the head. Both these techniques have in general quick results, but of course it depends on the people and on the person. Sometimes Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and but you have to try and see. Now, I also would like to highlight that I'm in the actually process of publishing my upcoming book. So of course you can check me here on Insta and all the social media, and hopefully when I'm done with the book, I would invite you to please get it and read it. It actually talks about many of these things. Today I covered just a very, very small chapter of it. So.
All right, wonderful. So we have questions.
Sure.
So we have a couple of questions here. Okay. The first one is, what is Kundalini meditation? From Harish Bilgi. If you could please elaborate on that.
I mean, I would look at these type of definitions. They can differ from one school to another, but because as I mentioned, you have the you have the one that is more related to Hinduism, one that is related more to Buddhism, one that relates. So it differs, and again, as I said, it goes to secular part. You can also have meditation through different religion of the Western religion. You have the Catholic meditation and so forth. So specifically, I would invite you to look at these definitions. But I believe Kundalini is more, because I personally did not do Kundalini, so I'm not familiar with that specifically. But technically, it is, I think, related more closely to yoga and more closely to the Hindu aspect of meditation.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I mean, so I can, the examples that I gave are mostly the ones that I did. I can help with other ones, but I would invite you to more look into it if it's something that I did not do myself.
Right. The next question we have is from Eva Logo. She's asking, she's saying, thanks, Georges. It was really interesting. I have one question. What's the type of meditation you are practicing now?
To tell you the truth, I go from one to another depending on the day, depending on the time. So usually, because the one that I did lately was Zazen. So I used to do Zazen, but even that, I don't follow the strict way of doing Zazen. I actually, sit differently. I sit more comfortably. So I think you can just, once you learn the technique, then you can actually relax in it and you can, make it your own. And I think that's the best way. So with many techniques that you learn or many ones that you try, better for you to find the one that fits for you. And even, for example, I do based on Zazen, I don't do exactly Zazen. I actually, I have a hybrid of it. It's one that is for me, that is more comfortable for me and my body and my posture and all of that. You see, meditation is not, it should not be taken very strict in a sense that ceremonial, very strict, very rigid. It should be taken in a way that at the end, you have to also be in a certain state of mind, be relaxed, even though you have to have a discipline, because the body and the physical discipline helps also to discipline the mind. It's just that you should not be in pain or you should not, be super uncomfortable when you do it.
Mm-hmm. So we have a couple more questions popping in still. People are still engaged. So, Professor, the next question we have is from Taima Barakat. She's asking, do you think the effect of cultures and politics and people have made meditation less pure?
I mean, to tell you the truth, the concept of thinking pure and impure is the basic of the problem. I mean, I don't think when you do meditation, you realize, especially with the oneness of everything, I don't believe you should think of pure and impure. And I don't feel that, I actually like how cultures change certain aspects of meditation. It reflects that variety of us being human. So you see, every part of the world has its own culture, has its own way of thinking, the environment, the context. This you cannot dissociate with anything that happens in that specific culture. And meditation is not an exception. So I would not see it something that is bad or makes it impure, or on the contrary, I see it as part of the variety, and it can fit one individual or the other. So I would say it actually made it more interesting and more available to everybody.
Thank you so much. That's a very interesting insight. I think a lot of people have this idea that something that has to be very traditional has to be very pure, and we cannot.
And to tell you the truth, it goes back also to the idea that at one point it was very religious and became secular. And I think you always, when you think religious and secular, you always have the pure, unpure aspect of things.
Right. So the next one is from Claire Lapidez. What is the type of meditation you highly recommend for women beginners?
First, if I may say, I would not say women and men, and I say human beings. So, honestly, to tell you the truth, you can start by simple relaxation before really understanding going into meditation. I mean, I first started with different types. So I built my own journey and I crossed my own road. So I would advise you to do that as well. If Zazen for me was really good, because when I was doing it intensively in Japan, also I was at the same time doing my research and all of that. So it helped me a lot in realizing a lot of things. So it is really case by case. I would not tell you start with this, start with that. I'm open to all of them, honestly. It's just that look it up yourself, see which one that actually, because I know, for example, some people I know that they like gong meditation, which is related to vibrations and sounds made from outside. So there's really a lot out there, and I cannot recommend you really one of them. You just have to try. I mean, I personally do Zazen and even a hybrid of Zazen, so I don't fix on one one specific type.
So to answer that question, you wouldn't say that women,
First, I would not say men and women.
There's no
Yes,
sort of discrimination.
I think I don't feel even fundamentally, talking about one's individual consciousness, it should transcend, a lot of these things that we actually identify ourselves with, whether physically, mentally, and so forth. I mean, the idea of the 5 layers that I talked about, I mean, most of us are in the physical and mental state, and most of us identify with a lot of things in these 2 layers or these 2 levels. I mean, consciousness can allow you to scroll up and down, or maybe not up and down, but to change the frequency, and then accordingly you will realize that what we think as identities, they are things that we collect, whether mentally or thoughts or ideas, or physically. Even when we collect physical things, even when you eat, I mean, it's when you create your own body, it is all collection of things. And then the more you reach to the understanding of consciousness, the more you transcend these type of labels, definitions, and all of that.
Wonderful. So we have 3 more questions, Doctor. Yes. The first one is, which tips, perhaps 1 or 2 tips, can you give to help people dealing with anxiety, especially in this difficult moment?
Okay, so I mean, at the end, I gave just the rule of 7. I think this works very well. I mean, it have been working for me. I mean, I'm telling you because I experienced. I usually, when I try to say something, I usually experience it myself. You can try it. It's a very simple exercise of relaxation. I mean, if you feel stressed, if you feel anxious, I mean, I would recommend you to do the square breathing concept, which is actually, you sit in a quiet room, in a quiet place. Even if you have, if you're in your office and there's a lot of people, just close the door, be in your office, just do the breathing exercise by observing your breath, by counting to 7, by repeating it in a very monotonous way. It actually automatically calms that anxiety. I mean, I would invite you to try it, and you will see it will work. I mean, just try it. Meditation is not about talking about concepts, and of course we interact intellectually, and we have to communicate to each other verbally and visually and all of that. But meditation, the best way to actually experience that is to do it, to practice, and that's what makes it very special. Is you can experience it yourself. You don't have. There's no reason for not all of us can experience it. It's not like special people can experience special things. There's no special in this. I mean, we are all special, and we can all experience that. And I think that's the most important thing. It's universal.
Yeah. So the next question is from Golnaz Afshar. Yes. I've been meditating with the Headspace app for a while now.
Okay.
What's your
opinion? With that, yes.
What's your opinion of Headspace or meditation apps?
I mean, they are interesting. I mean, they usually the meditation apps, they are guided, so they tell you what to do, how to do it, little by little, and sometimes they have music, sometimes they have people talking. I mean, as I said, you can try it and see if it works out. I mean, I'm fine with these apps. I don't say no, don't do that. It's just a try and see. Personally, I don't use apps because, I've been doing this for 30 years. So I actually have my own way. I sit in a certain place, in a certain, in a certain way. And actually, I used to do it usually very early morning, sometimes too early. So it's the best timing for me. There's also no one best timing, but it's the best timing for me. But from what I learned in the places where I visited, especially in the temples and the more religious ones, they usually do the practice. I mean, they do the practice sometimes many times per day, but they usually do it very early morning. We're talking for between 3 and 5 a.m. in the morning. I mean, there is something that happens in nature at that time, which is very interesting. It's the rising of the sun. Yeah. It's when, everybody is waking up, or at least the species that deals with the sun wakes up, because at night you have the species that deals with the night.
This is something a lot of us who haven't even experienced meditation or done any kind of meditation have experienced at some point in our lives. Waking up early, there's a certain sense of calm and serenity that we cannot explain necessarily, but it is there. CEOs have written about it. There's a lot of research about this as well. Obviously, we can't quantify everything, but the heart can feel something, at least. And personally, I'm aware of what you're talking about as well. So the next question we have, Georges, is from Omar. Can you tell us a little bit about your doctorate research and your meditation journey?
I mean, as I mentioned, I mean, my doctorate research mainly focused on the word shunyata, which is basically emptiness. And for me, it was very important, that term, that Sanskrit term, because it actually relates to meditation in specific and empty space in specific. So in my research, what I try to do is I try to link that term theoretically, philosophically, and then try to do experimental aspect of, by analyzing the monk space of meditation. I mentioned the Tan space, which is 1 by 2 meters, that usually the monks sit there and eat and meditate and actually sleep as well there. So I studied certain characteristics of these spaces. I also created and built an experiment in Tokyo, and then we did experimentation on almost 200 individuals. I wanted to link the aspect of how space can influence the well-being of people. And, with the experiment that we did and all of that, we managed to find out that certain characteristics that relates to meditation and space of meditation, if applied to actually normal space, they can actually enhance the well-being of individuals.
Wonderful. We have one more question. Do you have an estimate for when your book will be released?
I'm aiming at hopefully by this summer the manuscript will be done. So I'm aiming, let's say, maximum by next year. That's my goal, my aim. So probably when this whole hopefully situation that we are in now is over, then probably it would be at that time, probably when I release the book.
Wonderful. We don't have any more questions at the moment. Thank you so much. We will be sharing the recording of this with you, Professor, and obviously with all the attendees as well. I will now share my screen to just introduce myself, share my contact details. And we will, of course, invite participants to be able to get in touch with you later if they want through email.
Yes, of course.
But thank you so much once again. And we certainly look forward to having you again with us. Okay?
Thank you. Thank you
so much.
And thank you for everyone to be here and listening to the topic.
Absolutely.